Already have a podcast? It's time to join Spreaker's monetization program, the easiest way to profit from your passion starting on day one. You decide which episodes and exactly where you want the ads to be inserted, and Spreaker takes care of the rest. If you're not on Spreaker, it's easy to import your podcast in just a few clicks, and then you can monetize your older episodes too. For one free month on a pro account, visit Spreaker.com/monetize. That's SPREAKER.com/monetize to join and start making money today.
Hello and welcome to this new edition of the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the PA UK network. I'm your host, Paul Rook, and as always, we are joined by Richard Clements and Kerry Greenway. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing? You had a busy week?
Yeah, I've had a very busy week this week.
Yeah, poor Kerry.
Yeah,
working away.
You're going back to work soon, aren't you?
Yes.
At Ring, we reinvented the doorbell. And now we're changing the way you look at whole home protection with Ring security cameras.
Wait, Ring does cameras too?
That's right. And they're so versatile, you can put them inside or outside, wherever you need them most.
Handy.
Ring cameras let you see, hear, and speak to anyone inside or outside your home. And you can control them all from the Ring app to keep you and your family connected and protected.
Now that is smart.
Ring. Smart security made simple. Learn more at ring.com.
Yes, I go back to work on Monday, which is the end of my lockdown period. But I have to say, as soon as I got the call to go back to work, it was a very strange feeling. There was a lot of anxiety there. It was like, oh God, I've got to go back and pick up my job and how do I do my job? What are all my codes and passwords and stuff? But also, it really sort of brought me into that moment of thinking how constructive having 3 months off was. Yeah. Although it was a roller coaster at times, emotional roller coaster, it has been a very constructive time and really has helped refocus on what's important. So, so for me, yes, I go back to work Monday and effectively life is generally the new normal for me then, going back out to work and seeing the family in the garden and, sort of effectively it's the new normal for me now. I'm ready to embrace it. I'm ready to step back into it. Richard?
Yes, I think this is going to be quite an interesting period. I'm actually quite looking forward to the, because we've all been in the same boat, everyone, so it's going to be interesting to see how people pick up and sort of like restart their sort of, as close to normal lives as before, and whether they will take anything away from this sort of collective experience we've had, good or bad. It's going to be very interesting. I'm actually quite looking forward to it in a funny sort of way.
Well, I continuously worked all the way through the lockdown, so nothing's going to change for me. It's going to be more frustrating because I'm going to be going out to the normal places, and then I'm going to have to social distance, and it's going to be like, sod this fella.
It is going to be new experience for people shopping, because I work in retail. So it is going to be a new experience, but I actually think in the long term, it's going to prove to be a better experience. Like food shopping is actually a better experience without fighting through crowds. And, you might have to wait a bit longer and take your time, but taking your time is not a bad thing. Now, It's been quite a spiritual awakening for a lot of people in this period of time. And we've got a fantastic guest with us today who is an incredibly spiritual person, works very shamanically, known as the Crystal Whisperer. And his name is Gareth Hughes. He's one of my friends. I love you, Gareth. Hello.
Hello.
Such a long time since I've last seen you, Gareth. How have you been doing?
Oh, yeah, no, it's been, a real journey, We've gone through a lot of changes personally in the last couple of years. And we, just before Christmas, we relocated into this beautiful big house and this amazing place in the countryside, which we've been now locked down in. So it's actually been quite amazing, to be honest, for us. It's been an incredible journey, but really amazing.
Having that spiritual perspective on things, how have you seen the global effect of this particular situation?
Well, I mean, it's massive, and it's ongoing as well. This is definitely a process, not an event. This hasn't even really begun yet. This is just the start. If we go back to sort of like the very beginning of when it all started to come up, that fear was building in the collective unconsciousness. Mm-hmm. And that sort of brought on a lot of denial as well. So we started into this like really high level of cognitive dissonance in ourselves, in like the collective unconscious. Mm-hmm. And that started the process, and then when we went into lockdown, the fear levels rose up and placed everybody into their shadow.
Yeah.
And then the collective consciousness went into like a series of convulsions, which we're still going through now. And they call it the corona coaster.
Yeah.
The down and the up and the down.
Yeah.
And this is literally like the spasms of our consciousness, where we are, after living so long in this cognitive dissonance, knowing that climate change is happening, knowing that there's these terrible inequalities, and yet at the same time carrying on like everything's fine, knowing our politicians are just awful,
Yeah.
and that there's a better way of doing it. All of these things that we all knew but have been living in denial of, all of the walls came crashing down at this time, and that's why, in lockdown, everybody went into this big spiral of experience. It's made everything so intense.
Oh, totally.
And then, of course, you get in all of the other external influences coming in with their polarity. And this is the other thing that it's really brought up, is this real clear sign of, the split, the sickness inside of each of us, where we're so unintegrated that we are either good or bad. It's this good or bad, this battle of good or bad, or, holy or evil. Going on. I felt, especially at the beginning, the first 3 weeks, it was like we all went into this desert of our soul, a bit like when Jesus went into the desert, and there were the angels and there were the demons all dancing around us, all of our worst fears, all of our greatest hopes, all coming together in this big smushy mush, that we're still swimming through. And I mean, that's the experience, that's the actual experience of what's going on now, but I think this is just a reflection of the convulsion that the planet's going through. The planet itself is going through massive shifts. The climate is changing, in whatever reason why the climate's changing, definitely. And the electromagnetic field is changing, the North Pole is shifting, all of these things are coming together, and that's because of what they've talked about for such a long time, which is the greater picture, which is this wave of galactic or intergalactic energy, that wave of pure energy from the central core of the galaxy that we're now being exposed to, and we have been. And I like to think of it as not being something that's just happened. This is just a continuation of a process that's been continuing for thousands of years. And because it's a process that's gone on for so long, that's why we can look back to the ancient ones, to the old legends, the old myths, the old cultures and the shamanic cultures, and find answers that are relevant today, because they were in the same process that we're in. They were going through it in their own time, in their own way, and they could see where it was leading us, and so they put in their wisdom relevance for now, and that's why I think shamanism is so important at this time as well, because of all of those things that are going on.
I totally agree with that. Dog even agreed throughout that as well.
Good old Marley.
Good old Marley stuck his 10 pennyworth in there as well. It has been a massive shift, and you talked about shamanism. There isn't just one type of shamanism, is there? There's lots of different sort of segments of shamanism. Where do you come at it from?
The only real answer is my own personal one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's all there really is. There is only your own personal take on anything, to be fair. But in shamanism, that is something that is, in many cultures, really encouraged. And certainly in modern shamanism, and certainly the way that I like to approach it and the way that I teach it, shamanism is very much about an individual expression of personal relatedness to the hidden energies of the universe, of which there are many. And, it's, for me personally, I've always taken it that we're working with things that, if you like, are, they're not material beings in the way that we're material. We're not, we're made up of atoms, and these beings, the spirits and the energies that we work with within us and around us, aren't made up of those things, so they don't follow those rules. They certainly don't have form or shape in the way that we would think of it. So they all come in an individual way, depending on how you can relate to them. This is one of the reasons why, if you look around in shamanism, it is so different. There are so many different ways. There's different spirits and different gods and different techniques, different medicines. Some of the lessons seem to contradict each other sometimes as well, if you look on the surface. But actually what I found is, if you look really deep into it, if you really feel into these teachings, actually they don't contradict each other. It's only if we become rigid and consider that we have one reality, one version of events, one way of experiencing the universe, which is ours, and everybody else must do it that way, otherwise they're wrong. Actually we can see that there is an infinite different ways of finding your path, your own journey.
So there's actually a lesson there in itself about fluidity, isn't there?
Mm.
And
well,
maintaining
the
fluidity.
Practical. That was always the first thing that was given to me, was that shamans are practical. This is why we embrace the idea of there being many different worlds and different realities that we can work with and live in. In fact, there's as many as you can think of, because we might need to be able to go into any one of those at any point in order to do the job that's required of us. I have to work with, when I'm working with a client, for example, I have to work with their belief system, their worldview, to a greater extent. I have to step into their reality and see things the way that they do. They may not have the same belief in spirits that I do. They might relate to it all in a psychological way. So I will step into the reality of the realm of the mind and live in that world with them, and interact with them in that way, as just as real as if it was the world of spirits that I work with. And then I might even bring them to my world as well, which is often the case when we're doing one-to-one healing. They come to my world, as you come to me and see me for change, you come into my world, and therefore I can create change, because in my reality, in my world, I'm like the supreme being of ultimate power. And nothing can say no to me, and the beauties of this experience is that, of course, you can place yourself in the most empowering version of reality that there is, and work from that place. And this I've found really helps me in my work.
So when you say like you're going and bringing people to your world, is it almost like a spiritual world, or are we talking sort of like another dimension, or is there something else that?
Well, over the years, I've sort of come to the conclusion now that any idea of separation or barrier, for example, saying the material world, the spiritual world, the mental world, the emotional world, which, although I work with those concepts, actually in reality is an illusion, because everything is fundamentally integrated.
Yeah.
I mean, on such a deep, profound level that you can't really separate anything in any way. But again, I find that also empowering because, of course, therefore, you've got access to everything. Yeah, if nothing's
like the Matrix,
then everything's available. Yeah. Well, it's more like everything's an immediate moment rather than in a matrix. Yeah. It's like everything is all here, all happening now, and all we have to do in the past, the present, the future, in an imagined reality or in a real reality, it's all here, all on the table. All we need to do is just reach for that and bring that in,
that makes sense.
And that creates that reality for the person that's experiencing it as well as myself. I mean, these teachings really come from, a lot of the work with the plant teachers. The plant teachers really do understand the nature of reality, and they open us up to that, and they have been for thousands of years.
Richard?
Yeah, no, that is actually very interesting. I was actually very interested in what you said a bit earlier. So when you have a client come to you, it is very important for you to see the world through their eyes before you sort of take them on their sort of journey, or to explain to them what they're experiencing.
Yeah, because they will only be able to relate to the world in a certain way. There's no point me going in there and introducing concepts to them that are so alien that they'll just reject them and go, "My God, you're a nutter." So we have to work with their world, with their reality, but also what I try to do is tweak it. And try and bring their worldview around to where they've actually got the power to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. So ultimately, is that like the clients sort of you're just trying to empower them, basically, to
ultimately that's what healing is.
To use their own psyche or inner vision to improve themselves.
Yeah, I mean that is really what we like to think of it as. In shamanism, certainly for myself, and as Kerry said, there's so many different ways of looking at this. It's really, I can only speak for myself. For me, it's like there's a concept of like, sorry, I thought my phone was on Do Not Disturb. I do apologise.
That's all right.
It's because the vet might ring. We're about Freya because we're a little bit unsure if she's not well, so do excuse me on that. But I'll just put this on Do Not Disturb. So, what we like to think of is basically, if we're left to our own devices as a human being, knocking around without being triggered, without picking up energy from anyone else, without being hideously wounded by our upbringing or our parents or anything like that. Our energy field is going to be pretty lovely, pretty good. Yeah. For me, I like to work with the classic chakra system. It's a really easy way of identifying energy balance, seeing where the different levels of energy sit and how they are and everything. It's quite a convenient way of working. Yeah. And so in someone that's in a neutral, standing there natural state, your chakras are going to be in alignment. The energies of each one will flow evenly and equally through your connections to the earth, drawing that energy in, bringing it out, create the torus of our energy field, our energy system. And we've all seen the images of it that people make, aren't they, with rainbows and things, and very lovely. Yeah. That torus will generally be in an even balance, a nice even flow, and that's our natural state. Yeah, that's our natural energy state. If we were left sort of in a perfect world. Now, in the universe, in life, we get knocked about, we get wounded, we get damaged, we pick up the belief systems, shadows, you name it, and that all starts to knock our energy field out of shape. So from the shamanic perspective, what we're trying to do, rather than necessarily improve, what we're doing is just bringing someone back to the natural balance that they should have, if you like. That's their natural default setting. And life knocks us out of balance. So our job's to bring you back in to that space. And then once you're in your own energy, you don't need anyone's help. You're in agency and you're feeling great. And you're like, let's get on with it. Let's do everything I need.
So it's not the shaman's sort of job to sort of like try and get the individual to keep coming back to them to seek sort of like advice. Your ultimate goal is to get the individual to go off and be able to do this pretty much themselves.
Yeah, get rid of them quick. It's exactly. I mean, it's like if you went to the doctor and he said, come back in 2 weeks' time. And then you went to the doctor again 2 weeks later and he went, come back in 2 weeks' time. And then he kept saying that. In the end, you'd be like, well, I'm not getting any better, doctor. What's the point? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we need results.
So basically all you're doing is effectively sticking us back into factory settings.
Yeah. And the reason why it's so dramatic, the shift in people when we do start working in this way is only because it's just so blatantly disregarded by all medical and health professionals completely, and it's not even discussed or taught about. It's starting to a little bit. But, this whole area of existence, which every single human being has, is totally disregarded and ignored.
I think with the medical profession,
proof that it's really important, and that's why everyone's energy gets into such a mess.
Right, Paul.
With the medical profession, I think they're sort of slowly coming round to it, though, because I know, obviously from my point of view, we do a lot of meditation stuff now. So I think, they're slowly coming round to the realisation that actually it does help people, sort of stuff. So, I think give it another 10, 15 years, you might be working for the NHS.
Interesting.
It would be a fascinating concept, wouldn't it? It's like, today's, diagnosis is you actually need to go and see a shaman, not actually have a pill, which is, like you said, Gareth, it's like putting it back to factory settings. It's like, putting yourself back into your authentic self. But that's very difficult sometimes with the daily stresses. How do you maintain that for yourself on a daily basis once you've gone through that process?
Yeah, there is a series of things you can do that actually really make a really big difference, and actually none of it's massively secret. There's no massive secrets here with this. First of all, simple day-to-day things, simple everyday life stuff. Is keep your home clean and tidy. Makes a huge difference to the energy system and your energy field. Fill it with living things, plants, keep them healthy. Make that effort to notice them. Have animals in your life. That makes a huge difference to your energy field, having the companionship of animals, getting out into nature. The companionship of old trees is really important, but also the diversity of nature is also really important. So as many different forms of nature you can get, each one's going to feed you your energy field and restore it and boost it in a different way. The power of the forest is great for calm and peace. For clarity and for thought, it's the ocean, it's the seaside you need to go to. And all these different places, meadows, with flowers, for happiness. All these different natural places have got like a remedy just by being in them. Obviously things like diet are really important, just to really honour and re-conscious of the food you're taking in without, it's not about following one particular form of diet or a particular ideal belief, because of course reality is far too complicated for one answer to be right for everybody. We all have to find our own way. But to really be aware of what we're doing when we're taking in food, we're receiving the gift of life, from the earth, from Pachamama, and that touches on the most important, of course, which the Peruvians called Aini, but in our world we call it gratitude. Yeah. And they do say to live in gratitude is to live in, divine joy and bliss. And that really is the key to actually really being in a good energy state all the time, is to be in gratitude, to find the gratefulness for every moment and every experience, and really, really be in the gratitude for that. And then, of course, there's only joy when we're in that. So it's handy to remind yourself, hard to maintain that one.
Very hard, particularly if you are going through a particularly traumatic or hard time in your life. How can you be grateful for that kind of trauma coming in, whether that be an illness or financial worry or, all of those reality things that affect us so much. It's really hard to stay grateful when, you're down on your knees and down on your luck.
Yes, indeed. And you're not supposed to be. Yeah. And let's make that really clear, But then, hey, what a surprise. Life isn't a theme park. We're not here just to be happy all the time. A very wise person told me actually a long time ago when I was having a really bad time in my relationship, and I'm like, why do they hurt so much? Why does love hurt? And they said, what relationships are about? And I went, what? And they went, it's not about being happy all the time, you know that. It's about feeling the greatest diversity of emotion possible. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, this is part of it. This is part of your life experience. To feel the deepest pain is as important to feel the greatest joy. The wider and the more diverse your emotional landscape, that's really in many ways the measure of the depth of your life. And so we aren't meant to be happy all the time. You're right. We're not. How are you supposed to be happy when you've just lost your job, your house has just burnt down and your wife's left you? You're not supposed to be happy in those moments. You're supposed to feel terrible. You're supposed to feel awful, and you need to experience that, But what you can remember in those moments is to just experience it, and not to become it, because it's an emotion, it's a feeling. And all emotions and feelings change. Yeah. And even in the worst moments, the worst feelings, you're not going to feel that way forever. It's in many ways just a cloud, a dark, nasty, stormy cloud, but just a cloud. And that cloud's going to pass on and it's going to go, and another one's going to come in, And so each time we have an emotional experience, good or bad, it's an event. It's a one-off experience that we are having in our life. A one-off moment, a journey that's never going to be repeated, and we have an ability, even in the depths of those moments, even in the worst of those moments, to feel and remember that, and to be in that when it's useful. To be fair, in moments when you're in deep grief, for example, there is no thought. All there is just experience, just feeling. There's no sense to any of that, but there are other dark emotions that actually we can use to become very damaging for us. And in those cases, particularly things like depression, for example, which you can lose yourself in, remembering the transience of emotion is really important.
And we come back to fluidity and evolution, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. My partner gets really annoyed with me because he says, do you know what? You've got an answer for frickin' everything.
But hearing you talk there, that certainly sort of like struck with me, because there does seem to be a lot of pressure on people if they do start to sort of like look into spirituality and stuff to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I found this. Oh, I'm so sort of happy. And I've often sort of looked at people when they say this. I think you're trying to force this. It's it's not flowing. It's not natural. But sort of hearing you say that certainly makes a lot of sense. If you embrace everything, you have to have all these sort of aspects. You have to appreciate you have to go through the rough to appreciate the smooth.
But it's just about the acceptance of the experience of being a human being as well, because actually most of the choices about the emotions we feel aren't ours. They're decided by gut bacteria, for example, or the hormonal imbalance we've got in our endocrine system at that morning. So much of the experience of being a human being is biologically driven. It's immense, the soul is very much a passenger in some ways, like we are sitting in the driving seat of the car, looking around and we're in control of the car, but actually so much of our experience is going on under the bonnet in this biological machine, and it affects our experience of everything we see and feel in the world around us on such a deeply profound level. It's one of the reasons why souls love and come down here. They love coming down here for that purpose, because it's just like mental being in a human body.
So hearing you say that, Kerry's going to love me for saying this, and probably some of the listeners, but would you think this is, you're sort of going on about the biological sort of ways that we can react to. Is this sort of why sort of women tend to sort of get the concept of spirituality more than men in general?
It's actually to do with a really fundamental part of the universe, actually. It's to do with a fundamental polarity that we identify as masculine and feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to be fair, in humanity, we're actually pretty equal in balance. It's only because of various cultural things that women are conceived as a certain thing and men are conceived as a certain thing, and therefore we're conditioned and educated to be and think in those ways. Actually, there's not a huge difference. But the fundamental principle of masculinity is a linear one. A to B, in a line. The fundamental principle of femininity is circular.
Right.
Round and round. And so because we live in effectively a linear life, we get born, we go through to the end and die, the masculine energy is much better at dealing with that in some ways, because we think in a line. The feminine energy thinks in circles. And so the illusion of life as being a line doesn't resonate. And so naturally, people whose energy is more towards the feminine, let's be very clear, it is nothing to do with whether you've got a womb or not, will resonate with the spiritual energy more. Whereas those with the more polarized masculine energy will be more content with living in the linear world of our biological life.
Right.
Got it?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
There you go.
But remember the balance.
No, I like that. I like that a lot.
Paul, did you have something to add in?
No, I'm still getting my head around that.
Okay. What they've done, what's happened since the lockdown, there has been a profound change in the spiritual energy. Okay. And now I'm not an expert on this, and you can call me Mr. Speculation, but my intuition, my sixth sense tells me that they have literally opened up a new level of energy. And it does seem to be something that is being talked about and heard through other members of the spiritual community. Not that I really go and look for that information, but basically they're like pouring really high level information down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that everybody who was a channel is being really opened up.
I can resonate with that. Because what I've noticed in the field is like a lot of people had stepped away for a couple of years. That had gone on for a little while. People that you'd seen regularly in, you know, the way you work and stuff like that had sort of like drifted away. But now all of a sudden they're coming back, and they're coming back with a vengeance and saying things like, I need to do this now again. I'd put it to one side, but all of a sudden it's resonating amazingly on a different level to what it was before. And that's surprising them because they had stepped away and they were like, well, hang on a minute, you know, why did that happen? But that's because of their own personal evolution. They needed to go through that to then re-embrace it in a much stronger way. And that's because of this new level, as Gareth has said, that's coming down.
This is very high level energy. It contains very, very, very detailed information in it, and healing techniques as well. You know, I know personally from my own my own group, if you like, we're inventing healing techniques like left, right, and centre right now. You know, it was like 4 weeks ago, they gave me an entirely new form of ancestral healing that was just there. They presented it to me with a client, and it is incredible. And it's just changing. It's just unbelievable what's happening in these sessions with people online. I mean, it's like healing's online, and yet it's changing people's lives on such a profound level. That weren't happening before this. You know, there is definitely something very special about the energy at the moment.
It's almost like they are evolving alongside us in a way that they haven't had to before because of the change on this materialistic level. So they've evolved themselves to work with what we've got to work with. And like you say, you know, because of this social distancing, and we've not been able to visit people like yourself and, you know, go into that. Some of the readings I've done have been absolutely off the scale, and that's over Skype, you know, and it's like, how does that work? Because you're not connected energetically to that person because they're not in front of you. I can't answer it. It works. It's happening.
And it's because you are connected to them energetically. Yeah. You know, it's like left thumb and right thumb. Do you know what I mean? Go, we're both really individual. Yeah. But of course you're connected, you know. You know, left, right thumb and right thumb are completely intimately connected through arm and body, you know, and even though they may not acknowledge that, and you could have your little thumb people running around on the tabletop, couldn't you?
Yeah.
They're individual beings, but actually it doesn't change anything. Yeah, they're still intimately connected. You know, whether we conceive of that connection or not makes no difference to the universe. Yeah, it's being what it is, you know, and we're part of it. You know, and we're also part of the 72% of all matter that they've got no idea what it is. You know, it's actually 92%, isn't it, of everything? They've got no idea what it is. And that's that, you know, and so we're wondering why there's more to the universe than we can see. Well, not surprising there's more to the universe than we can see. We can only actually see 8% of it, you know. So fair enough, you know, and it's what makes me laugh with this particular one. This is about dark energy and dark matter that the physicists work with, you know, and I've talked to the plant spirits about what they think about maths and algebra. They laugh, but I won't go into that side of it. You know, is they acknowledge that there's all this stuff out there, but they don't seem to understand that that's obviously an integral part of the universe that we've evolved with. You know, as living beings, it's integral to the existence of the universe. So why wouldn't it be integral to our existence? You know, we are beings of dark matter and dark energy. You know, as much as we are beings of material substance. You know, in fact, only 8% of us is material substance. The other 92% is this dark energy, this dark matter. You know, the dark energy is the spiritual energy. that we all feel. It's the Reiki, it's the Rahani, it's the vortex healing. That's, 72% of everything is pure healing energy, and then the other 20 odd percent, that's the spirit. That's the consciousness collected in the form of, crystallized in a form that we recognize as awareness.
I'd like to just clarify, when you say dark energy, you're not talking as in bad and evil and stuff like that. You're talking about unseen. You're just talking in terms of unseen.
They can't see it. They call it dark because they can't see it, and they're very limited in their imagination.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that point, because a lot of people that we deal with dark energy is the demon factor.
Well, they don't exist, so they're just lies and fibs.
So you talk about entity, effectively like spirit people, and that they told you, and you're referring to this other world around you that most of us don't deal with. How much input do they have in your day-to-day life? I know for you that's a heck of a lot, isn't it? But how, for someone like a normal person, are they still interacting without people being aware?
Yeah, it's all to do with perception bias. And the bless the brain, it can't cope with absorbing all of the information it's receiving from all of our senses, let alone the spiritual senses. Do you know what I mean? It struggles with just the eyesight. It can only absorb a small fraction of what you're seeing. So we have massive barriers between us and the world in terms of what we're going to allow in and receive. Because the brain is a limited machine, can only take in so much. The soul is a different thing, and doesn't operate on those rules, but it looks at the world through the lens that the brain gives it. So it can only receive at the rate that the brain gives it, and so with the world, we are constantly filtering things out. Now, the truth is, once we start going into the spiritual world, the information is infinite and there aren't the same limits, but the brain is not going to be prioritizing that information, because we've been taught, most of us, to ignore it, that it's not real. Fairies aren't real. Santa Claus isn't real. The Easter Bunny isn't real. And so we have that belief extinguished in us. And so we have the importance of receiving that information extinguished in our brain. And so our brain, therefore, ignores the information it's receiving. Now, I won't say I fully understand the mechanisms about it all, but the brain is a sort of aerial that receives consciousness in a way, and it's how we are allowing that flow in, as well as the physical inputs that we're receiving, the balance of importance that we bring to those different inputs that creates our life experience. And so if we prioritize the spiritual world, we will start acknowledging the information we're already receiving. And I've gone about this a really long way, but basically what I'm saying is whether we are acknowledging it or not, we're still receiving it. It's just that most people won't acknowledge it because we're taught to prioritize physical stuff, which generally is important, to be fair.
So the brain's default setting will be to disregard. It basically just functions. It just takes the basics it needs to keep it functioning. Yeah.
The thing is, we have to. The brain is a machine. It uses up an awful lot of energy. This is one of the reasons why everyone's knackered at the moment, because we're under so much unconscious stress. Our brain's working twice as hard just to do the normal stuff that we would have before taken for granted. So we're getting more tired because we're using more energy. People forget the brain is a machine. Consciousness, as we know it, as we define ourselves as individuals, is an illusion. Consciousness is more of a field of energy that we receive, like radio receives a radio signal. You know, it's only in the in the hybrid weirdness of being in a body, an antenna, that we can experience individuality. Once we leave our body, the concept of being individual, of being Kerry, for example, or being Gareth, ceases to be relevant. You know, and we reject it. So we go back into the realm of pure information, which is what we are in that respect. So, you know, we are spirit. We are spirit informed on Earth. We can't separate it. You know, everything about the Earth is spirit as well. You know, the Earth is the spiritual energy concentrated into matter, into form, you know, into electromagnetism and gravity and all of those other things. You know, there is no real separation between any of it. So that was a right ramble, that one.
And that's okay, yeah. So, you know, the brain has a sort of basic default settings, but from what I got out of that, and if you sort of like go down a more shamanic sort of route, it will sort of teach you to exercise that muscle, which is the brain, to sort of incorporate more stuff into your overall perspective of life.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily the brain's the default setting. It's more of our cultural upbringing.
Right.
It's very much learned.
Oh, so it's learned behaviour, you would say.
Yeah. Children are all psychic, aren't they? I know. I remember, my nephew, bless him, when he was 3, 4 years old, and he was just talking, just really starting to put sentences together. And he turned around to me one day and he said, I remember before I was born, he said, I used to fly planes. Before I was born, I used to fly aeroplanes, you know, and I was like...
Yeah, it is a lot documented that a lot of children do remember a past life.
It's like it's like me when I was talking about our natural energy state being by default quite beautiful and harmonious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Children are naturally open to all input. They don't distinguish, you know, and they can only take in so much, but they don't distinguish between what they're taking in. You know, they will take in a bit of every input, including the psychic one, which is why they'll be perfectly normal, going about their normal thing, and then suddenly from nowhere come out with something really psychic, because they don't see a difference in the information. It's all the same to them. So, well, that's just as important as that. Yeah, it's only through learned reaction. It's when, you know, the parents go, oh, don't talk about that silly stuff. You know, that's like, don't shut that down then. You know, yeah. I mean, what I suffered with as a child was the sensitive child label.
Oh, bless you.
He's the sensitive child. No, he's a psychic child who's picking up on the screwed up energy of your dysfunctional relationship, mother. But no, project it onto an innocent child who doesn't know any better. Thanks. Yeah. You know, and that's what all of our parents did.
Yeah, I can
across
see
the
that.
board, you know, because we didn't know any different. And conscious parenting is going to be a really important focus for the future, you know. For me, this is what Generation X is. This is what we're all about. We're all about clearing all of these terrible ancestral patterns of behaviour that we've inherited from our terribly wounded families and ancestry, you know, and making sure that the future generations aren't holding those patterns and can be free of the, you know, horrendous codependent relationships and dysfunctional addictive behaviour patterns, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, I do like the idea of that. So you would say it's up to sort of our generation now, even though we won't see the benefits of it and possibly, but to sort of put in the hard graft now for future generations to reap the rewards.
Yeah, there's a feeling that every soul generation, if you like, every cohort of souls, you know, that come down has a sort of overarching mission, along with all of our individual hopes and ambitions, and we don't have to make loads of them in spirit. Do you know what I mean? We get very excited about it, you know, because we can adopt illusions of individuality up there temporarily, and we can play as individual spirits for a little while if we fancy it, because you're allowed to do what you like up there. So we can make individual plans. And so as a sort of collective, if you like, it was part of the sort of collective generational agreement, you know, because of the opportunity that the now brings, you know, because actually, particularly in Europe, we're living through the longest period of peace that it's ever known, you know, so, and that of course gives opportunity for people when we're all being bombed, don't really have a chance to consider spiritual development or, you know, healing your past or your ancestors. You know, you're worried about yourself in the moment, you know. And so we've been given this this entire generational luxury of peace to be able to explore these things. And that's why we have the responsibility for it. That's why we took this agreement, if you like. Yeah. Oh, look, we've got the space. We're not at war. Like our like our grandparents were, like our great-great-grandparents were, like actually pretty much every generation. But, oh, yeah, okay, looking all the way back, probably didn't have much of a chance to do it then. But now we have. So let's make that happen, you know, so that the next generation don't carry on. And, you know, in some ways, the next generation, of course, which they talk about, the indigo children, don't they, the purple ones, you know, they're the ones that are out there kicking off right now, doing exactly what they're meant to do, which is breaking all the rules, telling everybody else they're wrong. You know, I mean, you can see them in every aspect of society at the moment, kicking ass, me too. You know, that's part of that, you know, the whole gender thing, you know, the way gender's just exploded, that's all completely indigos, you know, stop defining us. Now we're not carrying the crap of our ancestors anymore. You know, we can start making things different. And the indigos are there to smash everything up, you know, basically, and just kick everything to pieces. It's the ones after the crystals and the rainbows, you know, that in 50 years' time will be picking all those pieces back up, you know, and creating that beautiful world that we're starting to see little glimpses of here and there. You know, people are starting to conceive of it. So it's, you know, it's positive, it is. But it is, you know, it's important that we deal with the stuff that we are struggling so much with in our lives. You know, we've got this ability to heal ourselves and not to be complacent, not to have to just put up with our fears and our addictions and our terrors, you know, and to just push it all down and don't talk about it over the dinner table, you know, and just put up with horrendously codependent relationships. Like our parents felt they didn't have a choice, you know, to resolve in any other way than either hating each other or divorce, you know.
Yeah.
You know, that's not good enough for us now. Now we're looking for a right relationship, and in some ways that's our really big task. It represents the healing of our ancestral line. Yeah. You know, for us to find right relationship with ourselves, with our partners, with our family, you know, it's massive. It's so huge for our generation, you know, and for other generations as well. You know, this isn't just like, oh, it's only if you're this age, you know, but it's particularly for us, if you like. We're at the peak of this little curve in terms of, you know, clearing the way of this, finding that correct way of relating to ourselves and to the people we love, you know.
Paul?
Big.
So we're literally on the horizon of a new way of life, basically.
Yeah, but then haven't we always been?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Every
something.
generation can look forward to the next and see a new horizon. Yeah.
That's certainly something that's sort of like, I've sort of, you know, sort of been around my sort of 55 years, and you always constantly sort of hear about this. It's like you always sort of often hear like an evangelicals talk about the second coming of Christ. It's always just round the corner, but it never sort of, well, in the last 55 years, it's never actually materialised. I mean, it seems to have this annoying sort of habit of just being too elusive.
Yeah, and it's because people think it's like it's going to be like a countdown, like the millennium. But did the universe really give monkeys about the millennium? It's like, well, you just invented a number system to approximate the universe, and what will you expect us to be getting all happy about that? It's not even particularly accurate one, so why should we care? The universe does its thing when it does it, so it doesn't really care about that.
Oh, right. I get it.
Yeah.
These are massive concepts that you two guys have really just started hearing, aren't they? Because it's bigger than you. It's bigger than what you've been culturally suppressed into on a day-to-day basis. So listening to Gareth going forward, Richard and Paul, this is aimed at, listening to Gareth, is it making sense to you two? Is it resonating on a level to you two? Because these are concepts you've not come across in the way it's been put to you before. Not in this sort of.
I've sort of like dillied and dallied around sort of like the edges of these sorts of like concepts. I've been very sort of, through sort of counselling and sort of stuff like that, and I do believe it is more of a sort of like as you do have to consider this and the spiritual. And sort of listening to Gareth sort of speak, and even you over the years, Kerry, sort of since I've known you, I know you sort of push this philosophy as well, and it is something I'm feeling more comfortable with, and it is something I feel I understand. It's just now sort of trying to figure out a way of putting it into some sort of good working practice. I like to think I possibly understand the theory. I'm not too good at the practice. I'm still held back by them sort of niggling, sort of lively sort of concerns, which probably aren't all that important in the long run. But there you go.
Paul?
But I think I would. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Paul. How are you?
It's making me think a lot more. But again, having the belief that I've got, the belief system that I've got, I've always, when someone said to me about God, for example, I've always thought of God as an energy as opposed to a little man sitting on a cloud. Mm-hmm. So when we die, basically, our energy of our soul goes up and joins this energy and filters through the cosmos, and I think it does have an effect on everything, because even like the moon has an effect on us as well, because we're like 80% water. The lunar cycles and that has an effect on the tides and stuff, and it can affect us as well. So again, I get that sort of concept. It's just approaching it from a different angle, but it's the same sort of thing. So I do get it.
Paul, to put this into some context for Gareth, Paul's literally just started on a spiritual embracement, shall we say, and having been quite sceptical of it before, and he's been going through basic learning meditation techniques, opening his chakras, those sort of things, in the last few weeks. He's having to open up his mind in a way that he's not really examined before, I would say.
Yeah.
Is that a fair...
It's a bit mind-blowing, so I've just sort of gone straight in there in the full-on.
So it's interesting to me, though, because I have come across these concepts before, and I work in not a shamanic way, but in a very similar sort of ethos way to this. So this isn't new to me. But for these guys, this is quite new way of thinking, a new way of perspection on things.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating to me to see how they're taking it and relating, and the questions that they're coming out with. So that's absolutely fascinating to me, seeing these two guys. I'm thinking, are they mind blown, or are they getting it? So we're actually coming up to the end of the first half of the show. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be joining you back just after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK Radio Network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Now, before the break, we were discussing some massive concepts to the world of shamanism and perspective of moving beyond the physical body and embracing a bigger, wider spectrum of being with Gareth Hughes, the Crystal Whisperer himself, we've got in the studio. Now, Gareth, on the second half of the show, I'd like to explore a little bit more about your own personal journey of how you came into this understanding. So where did all this start for you?
Well, I mean, I trust I can speak candidly about all of this. To be fair, obviously I asked myself this question when I first sort of went professional with this. And the truth is, it really was something that I was always a bit different as a child, if I'm being honest. I didn't really, I liked things that, nature, and I was more interested in playing in streams than playing with other children. And one of the key indicators was I had very strange dreams as a child that were repeating, and they were the same dream over and over and over again. I had it for years, and that would have been a sign that would have been recognised in traditional shamanic cultures, but in our culture, unfortunately, it was considered to be strange, and it scared and upset my parents. And I was labelled as sensitive. Mm-hmm. So I tried to repress it as much as I could as a child. But then my sister gave me tarot cards when I was 13, which I started playing with in the playground at school.
How did that go down?
I started doing readings for kids at school, and they all were really accurate. And that was just fun, It was just one of those things I thought, I can do this. Didn't know I couldn't. And but what really sort of changed everything for me at that stage was an experience that I had at 16 with some LSD. Mm-hmm. And that was a particular point in my life, at that time. And it was a time of everybody's life, I think, at that age, in the late 80s, early 90s. And, I actually experienced when the first time I took the LSD was we went out to a park near where I lived in Malden, and I suddenly saw the trees in a way that I'd never seen them before. And I sort of looked at my hand, and I sort of looked at the trees, and I was like, the trees, the hand, the trees, there's no separation. We're all one, we're all one thing. And it was like this incredible realization, this concept that sort of opened up my head, to this like experience of the universe. And it changed me forever. In that one. And that was really the first shamanic initiation, which now I recognize as it being that. At the time, we had more hedonistic ambitions, So that sort of laid the groundwork. But then I went into being a teenager. I realized and came to terms with my sexuality. At 17, I came out. Yeah. And I moved out of my parents, and I went very much into the sort of the gay community, and I spent many years in there, which is the subject of a different discussion, I think, a different show, darling. Definitely a different show. But, after a while, a lot of that world was very shallow, and at the time also I was very involved in music and art and all of that stuff. So I was still expressing myself very much. And obviously the psychedelics continued, but then it stopped in my early 20s, as these things do. And with my first partner, he was pagan, and I'd never heard of that subject before. And this was when I was about 19 years of age. And as soon as he explained the concept of the goddess and the divine feminine, something inside me clicked, literally clicked. And I knew then that it was something that I was going to love, and I resonated with it instantly, and I identified as pagan from that moment on. In the years that followed, I went very much into normal life, lived a normal life, started to live the patterns of my parents, repeated dysfunction in relationships, unsatisfactory career, and I started buying crystals. It started off just because I wanted to, but actually it sort of grew and grew and grew. And then I was offered the opportunity to have a Reiki healing session with a lady called Lily Thompson, and I had the most beautiful experience. And this really made me realize there was, healing was real, and I could experience change through this energy, whereas I'd always had that understanding, I'd never really focused on it. Now it started to take more of my attention, and I was in my late 20s, early 30s at this point. So we're talking about 15, 20 years ago. Then I was given the opportunity to learn Reiki. And when I had my Reiki 1 attunement, I can honestly say I think that was the happiest day that I'd experienced in my life at that point. And the understanding and the acceptance of myself as a healer was one of the most liberating experiences of my life. Similar to coming out, actually. It was like, oh my God, this is who I am, after years of feeling out of place, and then, but even then, still to be fair, my concept of shamanism at that point was lots of dirty, smelly men in sweaty huts with animal skins and making noises and farting and spitting and stuff. So it really wasn't appealing to me, which is why I then branched out into the crystal work. And the stone people and the crystal people really educated me for 5-6 years. I went into the crystal world and became the crystal whisperer because I had such a deep connection with the crystal beings. I could relate to them very quickly and hear them and speak to them. And this is when I started to realize that I had this ability to relate to consciousness in a way that I hadn't experienced.
Now, for the people out there, firstly, I'd just like to say we don't condone drug taking in any shape or form. It's Gareth's personal journey and his personal choices that we're discussing today. But secondly, going on to crystals, obviously that sings to my personal soul. What do you say to people that dismiss the natural organic world around them very easily? They don't tune in and give it that chance, do they?
No, it's a conceit, which is understandable, considering the nature of our existence as human beings. Many of the ways we had to evolve our awareness and our relatedness to the world require it to focus very much on ourselves, and that it's all about us and we're the only important thing, and in some ways that's true. Certainly for the biological body, we have to prioritize its needs, otherwise we won't live for very long. However, what that set up was the arrogance of assuming that therefore we were the only thing that is aware, and is conscious. And we can see the way that that's gradually changed throughout the hundreds of years of history. We only considered certain types of people to be truly conscious, in the past, and others were less so and treated as such. Then, we've come through the whole idea about animals are dumb and not aware and not conscious, but actually now we're seeing that that's not true at all. And in fact, any aspect of consciousness that you want to pinpoint, there's an animal out there that can embody it. Yeah. Actually, we're now starting to understand that plants in themselves are much more conscious and much more aware than we ever thought they were. And we can start to see that they respond, the mycorrhizal network between all the trees in a forest, creates that consciousness almost, an awareness of its environment and its surroundings, and it responds to that. Yeah. So we're starting to understand now, I think, as a species, the consciousness isn't exclusively belonging to us, And the next step on that understanding, of course, is that not only do the animals and the plants and human beings contain consciousness, but also the earth itself contains consciousness, contains awareness. And of course, the crystals are very much part of the earth. They are indeed the crystallized form of the earth, purified by nature into exquisite form and colour. Why do we have individual differences as human beings? It's because each person therefore can express consciousness in a unique way. Why is every crystal individual and different? Because it can also express consciousness in its individual way. And this is why crystals work and why they are more than just lumps, but then everything is a lot more than just lumps. It's only our arrogance as humans to consider that as being a way of the universe, and in fact it's actually more of an arrogance of just our culture, our Western patriarchal system, based on conquest and domination, that believes in that. If you look at the shamanic cultures around the world, their belief systems are radically different and place themselves very much in a community of awareness and not some sort of lord above it all. In shamanism, we see ourselves as part of a big family, and that family is all of existence, all beings. Yeah, we see them all as one, all as able to talk to us, as to speak to us, and as we develop as a society, as our consciousness evolves as a species, we're able to absorb this more and more and more, which is why we're seeing it appearing more and more. People are ready to understand the nature of consciousness in a clearer and truer way now.
See, me talking to my rocks, not quite so crazy now, is it, boys? It was very eloquently put. Thank you very much, Gareth. Could have put it better myself. Now, so you embrace the crystal, the stone world, and you have some amazing pieces. I would just like to put that out there. I've had a chance to have a little play with them, which is a very, very special moment to me, personally. So from that moment on, it leads you down a pathway that is a lot broader than just paganism, doesn't it? It opens up a door to the next level of that.
Yes, it very much does. As often is the case with healing, you peel one layer off and another one appears, and following that path, led me to one particular event that I can pinpoint as being really the catalyst for the next part of my journey that really did transform into, you know, the shamanism and the shamanic world and the shaman that I am now, you know. And that was, we went to the Big Green Gathering in, I think it was 2007. And I had a shamanic healing there. There was a lady with a teepee and a lovely spirally advert. It looked lovely. And I was like, oh, shamanic healing, twinkly fun. Not knowing what I was getting myself into. Because at that point, I know this is terrible to say, but I was part of the Love and Light Brigade. You know, we worked with Reiki, we worked with the crystals, we worked with the light and the beautiful harmonious energies. And it was all very beautiful and light-based work. You know, we didn't really, the concept of shadow energy or darkness, although it was touched upon, wasn't really looked at in the way that shamanism deals with it. So I went along to this lovely shamanic healing and I was like, oh, la, 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 la. Because to be fair, I'd been having real problems in my relationship. You know, we'd been together for 7 years at that point, me and my partner. And, you know, that 7-year period, it wasn't good. There was lots of real bad patterns coming up. And that had been going on for a long time. So I was a little bit in a desperate space with that because it had been a pattern I'd had before. So I went to this shamanic healer. I mean, I think about it now, I'm like, it was a bit naive, really. But I went to the shamanic healer and was like, yeah, I'm having this long-term problem with all my relationships, and they all stem from this one pattern that keeps happening in my life. What is it? Can you fix that for me? One session at a festival, can you just fix that for me? And she was like, you know, and now I recognise that. When people come to me and say things like that, at the time I didn't recognise that, but now I know what that is. And when I hear that now, I'm like, oh. And she went, yeah, I think this is something to do with your dad. And I was like, oh, well, you know, don't even go there. So we started doing some breath work. Bear in mind, I'd never even heard of breath work at this point. She started to drum. And after a certain point, she took me back and bang, I was there. And wow, I got a huge resurgence of, it's repressed memory syndrome, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in that moment, it unlocked a series of repressed memories. Which were very, very disturbing, involving a very close member of my family from when I was very, very young. And I went deeply into reaction at that point and was crying and screaming for 2 hours, bless the poor woman, you know, before she could calm me down enough to get me out. And that really, then that started me on a spiral, you know, because it was so difficult to integrate. And this is something that I know now is very common with repressed memory, because it felt out of place to the whole story that I told about my childhood and my life. It felt like I wasn't sure if it was real or if I was making it up. And it gradually ate away at me, to be honest. It did, and it sort of sapped me, and over 4 years after that, I just struggled with it on my own. I didn't really open up about it. I tried to keep it locked away and deny it, but it just got worse, and the uncertainty got worse and worse and worse. And I had healings, and I had, you know, I was working with what I knew, you know, and at that point I did discover Rahani, which was beautiful. And at that point, I also met a shaman called Sky Hummingbird.
Yeah.
And I started meeting with her, and I had a shamanic healing with her, which was incredibly emotional and very dramatic, and really started unloading it all. So whereas I'd been just pushing it all down, now it was really coming up. But it wasn't resolvable in that way. No amount of shamanic healing was going to resolve it. I needed to know. And I didn't have the courage and didn't feel it was right for me to confront the members of the family. So I felt I was a bit of a dead end. I was a bit of a stuck place. And that's when I was offered the opportunity to try something called ayahuasca. And ayahuasca is a potion that is brewed from several plants, the most important of which is called ayahuasca, and it's a vine that grows in the Amazonian basin. And it's the brew ayahuasca is been traditionally used for about 4,000 or 5,000 years as a healing tool and a way of contacting the spirit world. And I was lucky enough to be offered a place at a ceremony that was occurring in the UK. And at this point, because I was so unresolved, and there did seem no other way of doing it, because I had left that past of mine long behind by this point. I needed it. I knew it was the only way that I was going to be able to get any resolution, or at least it was the best way I had available. So I agreed. Mm-hmm. And there's quite a lot of preparation before a ceremony, and we had to do quite a strict diet where we weren't allowed to eat meat or take in salt or sugar, spicy foods, lots of different restrictions. And I really found that in itself was like a massive experience and challenge, realizing again what I was putting into my body and the changes that had on me. You know, so even before I got to the ceremony, I'd been in this huge process of dealing with caffeine addictions and sugar addiction, withdrawal and all of that, you know. But so I was very open and very ready. We got to the ceremony and I met the people and I felt comfortable with them. Both of the people holding the ceremony were experienced. They had a strong background and lineage in the medicine. One of them came from Brazil and had worked with indigenous people. And I felt very much like I was in safe hands. The location was beautiful. It was comfortable. And so I felt very excited, but very apprehensive.
I can imagine.
I then drank the medicine, which is a thick, dark brown substance with a really strong umami taste. It's very difficult to describe. It's a bit sort of like Bovril Marmite socks.
Sounds yummy.
It does a bit, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And so I drank the medicine and laid down in my position, and the shaman began to sing. And as the songs began to build, I started to feel the effect of the medicine. And it came on quite quickly, actually. And it was intense and it was really brightly coloured. It was geometric colours and rainbows, which I know now is because of Shakruna. But at the time I was just like, wow, rainbows everywhere. Everything was rainbows. Everything was kaleidoscopes. Everything was these beautiful, intense, vivid colours in front of my face. You know, even with my eyes open, all I could see were these beautiful lights and colours. And from within this sort of like turmoil of beautiful sensory experience, this voice appeared in my head. And she was like, hello, Gareth, and Mother Ayahuasca. Let's work. And I was like, whoa, who are you? And she was like, I'm Mother Ayahuasca. You know, why have you come to see me? Yeah, and I was, you know, I explained to her, I said, well, I'm here because these memories that I have, and I don't know if they're real or not, and I can't integrate it, and I can't talk to my dad about it, and I can't talk to any of my family about any of this. You know, what do I do? What is it real? Am I making it all up? What's going on? It's ruining my life. And she then showed me in a series of visions the truth of what I had experienced as a child. But she showed me in a way, unlike when I'd had the healing where I was reliving the experience and feeling the trauma of it, she showed me in a way like I was detached, like I was watching it from a television screen, you know, and I felt her arms around me, holding me. It's like being wrapped in a blanket. While you're watching this, you know, she was there holding me as I was watching these scenes. So I didn't feel traumatized by it. I wasn't scared or upset. I just was seeing it and understanding it. And while I was seeing it, she was explaining it to me, and she was telling me not only what was happening to me, but also what was happening for the other person and why they were doing what they were doing and what they were experiencing while they were doing it. And then she took me back to their childhood and showed me their experience and what their parents had been like and what they'd done and what they'd taught them. Yeah, and then she branched out and she showed me how this had affected other members of the family. Yeah, and what had happened and how they all related to each other because of that, and how therefore they related to me because of that. You know, and it was like literally being lifted above the whole thing and having it shown to me in like this panorama of wounding and suffering, but all put into context. Yeah, suddenly there was no being a victim anymore, you know, even though what had happened and was so disturbing, it was part of a bigger picture that she showed me. Yeah, and it was like she fitted everything into place, you know, and that was within the first 25 minutes of the ceremony occurring.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, and after that, yeah, and I'm just sort of sitting there going, just blown my mind completely like exposed my entire family history in like utter clarity. Do you know what I mean? Just like she was talking about the weather, and she went, right, now we've got that sorted, sit up, pay attention to what that person's doing, and that was the shaman she was pointing to, and she said, because I want you to do that, you're going to be an ayahuasquero. Now, at the point of time that I heard that, I had no idea what that meant. Okay, so I just went, oh, okay then, fair enough, sounds good. And got on with enjoying the rest of the ceremony. I ended up singing along, you know, with the shaman. We were singing together. We were having a brilliant time the rest of the time. It's like, yeah.
It's like you got to that point of understanding, perception and release at that point.
Yeah, actually I should say the release was the purge, by the way. Yeah, I did spectacularly throw up.
And that's a side of it that people don't really always get to hear about.
No, I did. I really purged. After she like showed me all of the family dysfunctions, and she then showed me where it sat inside me and said, right, it's in your stomach now, let's get rid of it. And I went, bleh, and purged it all out, which was brilliant.
Which a lot of these in-depth, deeper healing sessions, I would just like to put out, they're not always pretty, everybody. They're not always pretty.
No, I've certainly heard sort of like stories around ayahuasca of, the sort of, it's a good way of putting it, the purging. That seems to be a quite common aspect of it.
Yeah. The thing with the purge was explained to me by a really amazing shaman from the Native American church who do the peyote circles. And peyote is another psychedelic plant. It's got a long history of sacred use in the Americas, grows in the deserts around Mexico and in southern North America. And I was with a ceremony with him, and he, people were being sick, as we call it. And he says, in our culture, we don't call it being sick. We say you're getting well, because we see you releasing the sickness by getting it out of your body. The medicine is expelling the bad energy, the huacha, the sickness from your body. So actually, when you are releasing this stuff, this is your ancestral pain. This is the trauma from the abuse that you suffered. This is, sitting there in the bucket. You're not sick, you're well. You're more well now than you were before, and so we are getting well as we purge, as we release the toxins from our system, we become well.
Yeah, I can get that, even on a medical aspect.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing, because it is your body's way of expelling something that shouldn't be there.
So we welcome the purge on that level, but really, just before you're going to do it, you're not really so welcoming. You're like, I'm going to be sick, oh God.
Give me a bucket.
It's never fun. No one can ever say they were laughing as they... Well, actually, no, I have seen that once, but... the purge can be really quite intense. It really can, but it's the real deal. Shamanism isn't all pretty and fluffy and light, There's no rainbows and unicorns. Well, there are, but there's other things as well. It's not just rainbows and unicorns that are in the room, darling. There's other things here as well. That's very much how the medicine works. Ayahuasca is, considered to be the vine of souls, and in that respect, she is, in the light and the dark. They consider her symbol is the serpent, is the snake. With the snake's wisdom and ability, but also its ability to go down and hide deep inside, to disappear. And that's what she does, she disappears inside of us, goes down deep into the darkness of ourselves and brings up all of this stuff, all of these things, and illuminates it, And after that first time I drank, it started a process that went on and on to this present day, and now I can say I've worked with the medicine hundreds of times. And, I've witnessed the transformation it's brought to people in their lives, and how it's created the most profound change. It certainly changed my life. Completely, and transformed my entire existence to one that I could never not be in gratitude for, and always grateful, for what I've been given and the opportunities that I have. It's truly an honor to work with these medicines and work with these traditions. There's no two ways about it. And she's come the medicines came to us to help us, in the transition that we talked about earlier on, at the previous time, where we're coming to this point of expanding our awareness, and really accepting the truth of our place in the universe.
It's quite interesting. You touched upon the snake or the serpent, whatever you like to call it. I was talking to Kerry about this and the other day, and I first heard about this through sort of reading about ayahuasca and the works of Graham Hancock, who's who's experimented with it, and the motif of the serpent seems to be a universal one in a lot of cultures, that sort of ancient cultures that didn't have any sort of connection in the past, sort of physical connection, sort of travel, you know, and you see this motif, and particularly of the feathered serpent appear. Sort of South America is particularly prominent, and you can, you know, sort of even in the Far East, places like Angkor Wat and places, there are depictions of sort of like literally the identical sort of feathered serpent, which is sort of like a serpent's head with a sort of like some sort of a necklace of feathers around its sort of head. And what do you make of that? Do you believe that this sort of journey, sort of with the aid of sort of like ayahuasca and other sorts of hallucinogenics, or whatever you like to call them, do you think people are collectively accessing this sort of information from the same location?
Oh, yes. You know, it's one of the things that I really love about working with the medicines is that they do point out the spoilers, as I call them, you know, and that's one of the spoilers that I think that comes out with it, is the fact that, well, how can we all be completely individual beings living in separate places, in separate cultures, unattached by thousands of years of time, dimension, whatever you care to mention, and yet all still come up with the same truth? Yeah. You know, well, maybe that's because things aren't quite as separate as you thought they were. Oops, spoiler. Oops, you know, and there's loads of them. There's loads of those spoilers in life, but the medicine really points them out to us, you know, and makes us understand that. Oops, sorry, someone just slammed a door. Katie, can you not do that, please? Sorry, we've got my niece staying with me.
It's okay.
All right. Bless her.
During lockdown, 13-year-old.
I've got one of those. I've got one at 13 and 15 with me through lockdown. It's been an adventure.
Bless the children, our greatest teachers.
I'm so grateful for my children.
Thank you for your teachings, children. Showing me ingratitude on a high level. But yeah, no, back to the ayahuasca. It's like, it's what was my thread on that one before I got disturbed by a slamming door? I can't remember.
The various cultures having this underlying
that was the question, wasn't it? Yeah, you know, the same truth come through, you know, in all the journeys, you know, the times I've sat down with people, you know, who have had experiences with medicines and stuff, and we're talking about the worldview, and it's in alignment, you know, it's the same, where the truths come back. And actually, if you look around all of cultures across the world, you know, anytime someone truly goes in and listens, they come back with this truth, this universal truth, you know, and the way it's represented, if you like, with the visual imagery of the serpent is also to do with this deep understanding of our own existence, you know, and the fundamental power of the spiral, which is what the serpent represents. The serpent is the double helix. It's the DNA, you know, it's the biological, you know, mechanism within every single one of us that creates our existence. Yeah, so we you know, when we resonate with the energy of serpent, it's because it's the dance of our own DNA. Yeah, it's that deep, it's that cellular, this understanding, this recognition within ourselves of these archetypes, which is why it comes through, because we are actually much, much more than just physical bags of meat and water. You know, we are divine reflections of pure consciousness, and that part of our nature is extra dimensional. Yeah, and we exist in extra dimensions of consciousness that aren't related to physical matter, but do interrelate to them. And when we experience our consciousness in those other dimensions, we have access to all of the possible information of the universe. They call it the Akashic record, some people. The record of everything that ever was and ever will be and ever, can be, and that is not a library with loads of books in it and people writing it down frantically. Do you know what I mean? As we do it going along. Oh my God, quick, write it down. Sneezing, quickly. You've missed the bit where he wiped his nose.
That's just a personification that we've put on that, though, isn't it?
Exactly. What it is an extra dimension. Yeah, the Akashic record is the next dimension up from this one. Okay, and it's the dimension where time does not exist. It steps beyond time. Yeah. If we can imagine ourselves running around the tabletop as two-dimensional beings, the limitation is time is the limit there. Yeah. We can only go backwards or forwards on the arrow of time. Yeah. And in theory you can go either way, but you can only go one and you can't swap. Yeah. So we're stuck going one way. Yeah. In our four-dimensional reality. Okay, when we go to the fifth dimension of reality, time becomes like the tabletop in front of us and we can walk all over it. Yeah, where, hey, you can stamp all over that and go back to the past, go forward to the future. Yeah, look over the road and see what the neighbours are doing. It's all available to you. Yeah, and in that place, the shaman, that's where we go to for this information, so we can see the future and the past, and Terence McKenna described it almost like reflections coming back, the past reflecting forwards and the future reflecting back. But in the, for me, the truth of it is that actually it's this extra dimension of existence, and then that isn't even the end of it. There's others. There's bigger ones than that. Because the fifth dimension only relates to all of the past and the futures of this reality. There are other versions and other existences and other realities that also have pasts and futures, and they have to be seen at the next dimension up. There's some cool stuff about all of that on the internet if you have a look for it.
Well, now you're starting to sing to Paul's little soul on this one with the multidimensional factor, because that's, when we was talking last week about H.G. Wells, funnily enough, and the concept of time travel, and then we actually went quite into a spiritual perspective on that, of the past, present and future, didn't we, guys? And
Kerry doesn't like that subject, though.
I don't like it in regards to...
it confuses her better.
In regards to travelling, physically travelling in time, well, you can do that spiritually. It's a very different concept.
Yeah.
And, that's the point, isn't it?
Yes, it is. When we travel with consciousness, we're not using normal matter. So we're travelling with the part of us that exists in what scientists call, dark energy, dark matter, which isn't dark in its nature, it's unknown. That's the bit of ourselves that goes travelling through all of those dimensions, and, ultimately no one's really, it is beyond our ken, truly, 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 and going back to my experiences with the medicine, I have asked her about all of this stuff. Yeah, being the inquiring mind I am, I have pushed her on natures of reality and stuff like that. It always ends up generally with her going, "Oh, bless you, darling." Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a bit much for you to really get it. You're not really going to grasp reality until you're not in the physical body because of all the limitations that it brings you. So don't worry about it too much. but do understand you can have whichever one of them you want. Yeah, and that's quite interesting. That was when I asked her if she was real or not. Yeah, in one of the ceremonies, I said to her, I said, "Oh, Mother Oscar," and she's like, "Oh yeah, Gareth," because I was very lucky. I got that friendship relationship with her, which is lovely. And she's like, "Yeah, Mother Oscar. So, are you real, or are you just made up? Yeah, you're just a figment of my imagination. Are you just my subconscious talking to me? Or are you something different from me? You know, are you separate? Are you a separate entity?" And she was like, "What do you want the answer to be?" And I was like, "Well, it doesn't matter, does it? I just want to know, yeah, are you real or not? You know, are you real or are you made up? You know, am I making you up or are you a real spirit?" And she went, what do you want the answer to be? And I was like, "No, it doesn't matter what I want the answer to be. The answer doesn't matter what I want. It doesn't matter. What I want to know is what you think. Yeah, are you real or not?" And she went, "Well, I can't really answer that until you tell me what you want the answer to be." And I was like, "Yes, you can. Just tell me." And she's like, "No, I can't." And I was like, "Yes, you can. Tell me, are you real or not?" And she's like, "No, what do you want the answer to be?" And I was like, "I don't know. Don't ask me what the answer will be. I want you to tell me." And she's like, "No, I'm not going to tell me. Tell me what the answer is. Yeah? Do you want me to be real or not?" I went, "Oh, crying out loud, I do want you to be real." Okay, and she went, "Great, yes, then I am." And I was like, "No, you can't say that. But that's not fair. That's cheating. You can't say you're real just because I want you to be real." Yeah, and this is when she said, she went, "Oh, Gareth, no, dear, bless you. Reality is a lot bigger than you think." Yeah, and I was like, "I don't understand." And she went, "I know."
So it's almost like she's part of your inner self, and
well, what she did
the only way you can answer your question, well, you've got to find out the answers yourself, sort of thing.
Well, what she did was she did this really weird thing, and this is where language breaks down, okay? Because she showed me in a way that I can't ever transmit. But what she did was she took the moment I was in, and she took the reality of it, and she sort of opened it up, and she spread it out, This is the only way I can describe it. She like smeared the reality out into this huge spectrum of reality,
Okay.
So she literally like opened up reality, and in that sort of vision, I suppose, but it wasn't really vision. It was more than that. She sort of put a little sort of point in this big spectrum and was like, "Look, that's where you are in your reality. Okay. Yeah. If you want to believe that I'm real, look, the whole rest of that reality answers that. You move to that point in reality, and it becomes your truth. Someone else who is wanting to have a different version will move to that version of reality, and that will be their truth. And then you will both live in that, and it will be true for both of you, even if it seems like it contradicts the other person from the point of view that you're living in, and she made me understand that, really how we view the world is up to us. It's our choice how we relate to it, and the universe will then relate back to us on that level.
So what you have to remember is, and what they're trying to point out, this is not a competition. You're not trying to all sort of get the same image of the same thing and think, oh yes, and compare notes on it. You're sort of, it is purely individual.
Yes, but you can have realities in common with each other. And she had great fun showing me. She showed me all the scientists, all sitting in one version of reality, all writing these really long dissertations and theories, all proving each other's versions of realities are correct. And all going, oh yes, our realities are correct, aren't they? Yes, we're all correct. Reality. I've got this piece of paper that explains everything and says that everything in my reality is correct. Yes, we've got the right one, you know, and they can all reaffirm that for each other and all live in that reality together. Doesn't mean that we do. You know, just the same as the Catholics or the Buddhists or the Hindus or the Muslims can live in their realities. And who's us to say that Allah isn't real or God isn't real or Jesus isn't real, you know, or Buddha isn't real? You know, their experience with these energies and these forces is real, as real as any one that we're having, you know. They're all real. That's the only real truth, is that, yeah, no, there is. There's all of them, everything, and everything more. Yeah, it's not like we've got the monopoly on concepts of reality. Yeah, there are huge amounts of versions of reality that we've never even understood as a species. You know, some of those versions of realities are occupied by other beings.
Other beings.
Aliens, for example, plant spirits, animal spirits.
They've all got to live somewhere, haven't they?
They all exist in these other worlds. That's what we call them, you know. The middle world, the lower world, and the upper world is one of the shamanic ways of looking at it, you know. With the tradition of, you know, the lower world being the world of the dark spirits, the middle world being the life, the world of the physical beings, and then the upper world being the world of the light and the teacher spirits, you know. But also you've got Yggdrasil, the world tree. I love that one as well. Very eclectic. I like to collect all these different things and smush them together. And why not? You know, I can have whatever reality I like, thanks, as long as it works for me and I'm effective in it.
Yeah.
You know, who's to say I'm wrong?
Isn't it just sort of a way of making your life feel better, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with that?
Nothing. There's nothing wrong with it at all.
Isn't that the whole purpose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what it's all about? Yeah.
Simple when you think about
being
it.
right, and let's worry about being happy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And being authentic to yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times in any spiritual teaching, every single time you can give them the tools. It's up to that person to evolve it into what feels right for them, and that's a basic. That's a basic, isn't it, Gareth?
You know, it is, and we know but we can only learn in the way that we can learn as well, and we can fall into many traps by forgetting that. You know, and assuming that because we've learned something in one particular way, everyone else has got to learn it in that way.
Yeah.
And that they can't get to that unless they learn it in the way that you learn it.
Yeah. It's sort of like, it's like you sort of look at some of the more established and mainstream sort of like religions and spiritual practices. It seems as soon as they start putting restrictions on it, that seems to be where conflict starts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's about a divergence of priority, to be honest. You know, and if you look at the big major world religions, particularly, or any of the major organisations, to be honest, the scientific one as well, to be fair, which is another belief system, just the same as any of the others, you know, is that it's... it's what they're basically doing is like trying to. I'm losing my thread. I've lost my thread now. What were we talking about again?
Sorry, yeah. The conflict in sort of like sort of just being too restrictive in your sort of spirituality.
Yeah, their priorities aren't the same. Yeah, their priority is not about creating an understanding of the universe. Yeah, although that is what it started off being, and every single one of them did, you know. But along the way down the line, the other priority of sustaining themselves, became more important. Yeah, and that's where they go wrong. They're more important and more interested in sustaining themselves as organisations than they are of sharing the truth with each other. So they have to write into their versions of truth ideas and concepts that refer to themselves as the only answer. Yeah. And because otherwise they can't sustain their own existence.
There's no evolution there.
Mm-hmm.
And we go back to evolution and
funnel
fluidity.
everybody into one version of reality which doesn't fit.
No.
Yeah.
And this,
you know, and that's where they go wrong in that respect.
And that is a very sort of human trait, isn't it? That's a very sort of like, you know, sort of flesh and bones sort of thing to do, isn't it? To want to do.
The tribalist energy, the animal energy, you know, which is, you know, one of the reasons why we came down into these bodies. Yeah, because of the ability for it to go into those dark, instinctive places, you know, which are unique experiences, you know. Human anger and human nastiness is pretty unique in the universe. There's not many species that can be such arseholes. It's true. We've got a bit of a special one on that one. Yeah. No, we're one of the most highly emotional species in the universe. A lot of other species look at us and think, God, they're hysterical. They're just running around the whole time, either laughing or crying, like hysterical maniacs. It's true, we're just so, you know, hormonally driven in these vehicles. It's great. The soul's just having the best time on the planet at the moment. Soul's loving it at the moment. Souls all over the world are just having the most amazing time. They're like, it's all gone completely crazy. I've been waiting for this. For ages. I just think so many of them have been piling in the last few years. You know, it's like, God, can everyone come down for this bit? It's all kick off. It's going to be completely mental, man.
And the dogs agree with that point too.
Yeah, no, it's true. You know, there's a waiting list for living on Earth for the opportunities that it provides. You know, because we spend time on all planets. There's many, many different planets with life on. And we can exist through the lens of the soul-body hybrid, if you like, in any one of those.
As they explained, that answers that question of, well, you know, we only started off with a small amount of people on this planet, and now we've got billions, and you're telling me that everyone's reborn. Well, if there's many types of forms of life that are waiting list to come down to live life as a human, that kind of explains it, right?
Yeah, exactly. There is. They've been piling in because everybody wants to have a slice. You know, it's like the big event. You know, it's like if you like, you know, like these big world game events. You know, where all the gamers all log on and all join in at the same time for this big massive event. Well, this is what this is. It's like, oh my God, come down to Earth in the 2020s. You souls are going to have the most amazing time.
And then they all get locked in.
And then we all get locked into our houses and have to have an awakening.
Yeah, exactly. And we were like, yeah, let's go down. Wow, it's going to be fab.
On that note, we have actually come to the end of the show, believe it or not. It's been an absolutely fascinating conversation regarding different ways of spiritual practice, and Gareth has so eloquently put and answered so many of our spiritual questions that we would have. I'm sure Gareth is going to come back with us at some point in the future. We would love to have you back, Gareth. It's been fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Be my pleasure. Anytime, darling, anytime.
Awesome. Thank you. On that note, boys, wow. There you go, little crash course for you to ponder on and get your little heads around. I'm sure we've mind blown you both on a few levels. today.
Oh, it was a good show. That enjoyed that.
Paul?
Very, very good show. Still thinking of loads of stuff. Yeah, mind blown. What can I say?
Next week we will be back with you on Tuesday to give you the next slice of the Paranormal Concept Show. On that note, all I've got left to say is say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
At Ring, we reinvented the doorbell. And now we're changing the way you look at whole home protection with Ring security cameras.
Wait, Ring does cameras too?
That's right. And they're so versatile, you can put them inside or outside, wherever you need them most.
Handy.
Ring cameras let you see, hear, and speak to anyone inside or outside your home. And you can control them all from the Ring app to keep you and your family connected and protected.
Now that is smart.
Ring. Smart security made simple. Learn more at ring.com.